This episode of Podsession is brought to you by topnaturalhealth.com, your go-to source for nature-based supplements, skincare, and anti-aging products. Visit their site for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. Now here's your hosts.
You know, sometimes we try to understand things, people, that are just really difficult, really dark. Today we're doing a deep dive into Ted Bundy. Our goal isn't sensationalism. It's about building a really thorough historical picture. His life, what led to the crimes themselves, and, well, everything that happened after.
Exactly. We're looking at it from his early days right through to the end, using a whole range of sources.
Like what kind of sources?
Well, we've got analyses of true crime itself, academic papers on the case's impact, public discussions, survivor accounts, which are incredibly important.
Oh, crucial.
Yeah. And examinations of Bundy's own words, the forensic evidence, insights from people who knew him, like Ann Rule, and expert takes on his psychology.
So yeah, a real 360 view. Bundy is still this figure people are fascinated by decades later. You see him in books, movies, documentaries.
All over.
Our goal here is really just to give you a factual, insightful overview, cut through some of the noise, you know. Okay, so let's get into it. How do we even start to understand someone like Bundy, I guess? The beginning, his early life.
Right.
And what's striking, what Ann Rule really brings out is how, well, normal it all seemed. College, thinking about law, politics. What does that initial picture even tell us?
Well, that contrast is key, isn't it? Between this apparently normal guy and the horror he caused later. That's central to why people are still so gripped by this.
And Ann Rule actually worked with him.
Yeah, at a crisis center. It just shows how deceptive appearances can be. Makes you question your assumptions about who could do something like that.
And then you look at Bundy's own version of his childhood. It gets murky.
Yeah.
Some reports suggested a pretty troubled background, maybe abuse.
Incest even mentioned sometimes.
But he always pushed back on that, right?
Yeah.
Said his family life was wonderful.
He did. Which just highlights how hard it is to find, like, the definitive truth about those early years, even now.
It really is.
And what's interesting analytically is this idea that Bundy felt he developed, intellectually, but not really socially.
He apparently thought he lagged behind there. Even mentioned possibly a genetic thing holding him back socially.
A genetic thing? Wow. So this interplay between, I guess, nature and nurture, it's there, but impossible to really know for sure in his case.
Exactly. You can't draw firm conclusions.
So, okay, we have this picture. Seemingly normal young man, maybe some underlying issues he himself recognized. When did this shift happen? When did the crimes actually start?
Sources point to early 1974, Seattle area. That's when young women started disappearing.
Yeah.
Vanishing.
Yeah. The stranger beside me documents that time, a real sense of anxiety growing in the community. It was the start.
And then Lake Sammamish State Park. That feels like a really key moment. A guy calling himself Ted, talking to victims.
Yes. And the sketch that came out from witnesses.
Ann Rule saw it, right?
Right.
And noticed the resemblance.
She did. But here's the crucial part. He wasn't immediately the prime suspect.
Why not? Because of that image.
Precisely. His charm, his respectable look, they were incredibly effective shields. It really speaks to how we sometimes judge books by their covers, associate a certain look with innocence.
Just chilling how that facade let him operate. Then he moves, right?
Yeah.
Late 74, Salt Lake City for law school.
Mm-hmm.
And the pattern. It followed him.
It did. Similar crimes started popping up in Utah, then Colorado, Idaho. The spread, it eventually got investigators in different states talking.
Sharing information.
Yeah, comparing notes. And Bundy's name started coming up more and more. It was an early example of that kind of multi-state cooperation, maybe basic by today's standards, but vital then.
And that leads to his arrest in 75 in Utah. But not for murder, initially.
Correct. It was for kidnapping. He'd posed as a police officer.
Ah.
So while not murder, it was a big step. It put his violent potential on law enforcement's radar more formally. Tangible proof.
But even after that conviction, the story just gets wilder. He's extradited to Colorado for murder charges and escapes.
Not once, but twice.
Twice.
It's kind of unbelievable, isn't it? Those escapes really cemented his notoriety. You see discussions online even now about how that ability to just slip away made him seem almost mythical, terrifying, security breaches, essentially.
Unbelievable. And after the escapes, he makes his way to Florida. And Florida, that's where the crimes seem to take an even more, brutal, direct turn. The Omega Sorority House Attacks.
January 15th, 1978. Florida State University. Just unimaginable violence. CBS News reported how the attacker got into the unlocked house.
Unlocked.
Yeah, and murdered Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy, and then attacked Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler in their room. They survived. Miraculously.
Miraculously is the word.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop there that night.
No. A short distance away, Cheryl Thomas, a dance student, attacked in her home too. The speed, the closeness of these attacks, just brutal.
And the weapons. CBS mentioned a log.
A heavy oak log, yeah. It signifies this raw, maybe impulsive brutality. It felt different from his earlier MO, the luring and abduction. Maybe an escalation.
So the investigation in Florida starts. Sheriff Ken Katsaris gets a call about an escapee from Colorado named Ted Bundy.
Right. That call comes in. But interestingly, there was some hesitation at first to link him specifically to these attacks.
Why? Because the style was different.
Exactly. As CBS reported, the breaking and entering, the seemingly random, frenzied violence, it didn't quite fit the profile they had of him from the earlier cases. It shows how hard it is when offenders change their methods.
And then, adding to the absolute terror, 12-year-old Kimberly Leech disappears soon after.
Yeah. That just intensified everything. Huge pressure to find who is responsible.
The break comes with his arrest in Pensacola, February 78.
Driving a stolen VW Beetle. And inside the car.
Stolen IDs, credit cards.
Lots of them. Linking him back to Tallahassee, where the sorority attacks happened.
Yeah, that was big. But the really huge piece of evidence, the bite mark on Lisa Levy.
Absolutely crucial. Both CBS and the Harris Museum info really stress this.
And apparently his teeth were quite distinctive.
Yeah, the Harris Museum points out his lower teeth were noticeably crooked. Made the bite mark identification much easier, more definitive, like a dental fingerprint almost. Shows how forensic dentistry was really becoming precise.
Plus there was an eyewitness, right, from the sorority house.
Yes, Nida Neri, a Chi Omega sister. She saw a man leaving the house who matched Bundy's description. Another key piece.
So you've got the stolen stuff, the bite mark, the eyewitness. It's starting to build a strong case.
Undeniably. And it leads to the trial, which was apparently a huge media event.
One of the first major trials broadcast live.
Yeah, CBS noted that. The public got this unprecedented view.
And Bundy deciding to represent himself. That's bold.
That's bold. Or arrogant.
Definitely speaks to his arrogance, his belief he could control everything, cross-examining witnesses himself.
Wow. But then you had the survivors testifying. Kathy Kleiner, Karen Chandler, Cheryl Thomas. That must have been incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful, yeah. Even though, Kleiner and Chandler couldn't visually ID him from the attack itself because of the circumstances.
But Nida Neri did identify him in court.
She did. And then came that forensic dental evidence, comparing the molds of his teeth to the bite mark.
Like something out of a TV show, but real. And devastatingly effective, it sounds like.
Groundbreaking stuff at the time. It provided that physical, scientific link. Very persuasive for the jury.
And the verdict comes down. July 24th, 1979.
Guilty. On all counts for the Chi Omega attacks. The murders of Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman. The attempted murders of Kathy Kleiner, Karen Chandler, and Cheryl Thomas.
But that wasn't the end of the legal process for him.
No. He was later found guilty and also sentenced to death for Kimberly Leech's murder, too.
Just devastating. What about the survivors? How did they cope after the verdict?
Their journeys were long, obviously. CBS touched on it. Kathy Kleiner talked about the fear, but eventually marrying. Karen Chandler actually went back to the sorority house.
Wow, that takes courage.
Incredible courage. And Cheryl Thomas, despite her injuries, was determined to dance again. Their resilience is just amazing. A real counterpoint to all the darkness.
So Bundy's on death row after these convictions.
Yeah.
And his notoriety, it just grew.
Oh, yeah. Media attention intensified. And then right before his execution, he started confessing.
Yeah, how many?
At least 30 murders. Though, as CBS and others noted, this might have been a last-ditch effort to delay things. Many believe the real number was much, much higher. Ann Rule, Robert Keppel, they thought so.
Which brings us to those interviews he gave on death row. Trying to explain himself, rationalize.
Yeah, the Ped-Not analysis really digs into that. He used these neutralization techniques, psychological ways to minimize responsibility.
Like how?
Well, dehumanizing the victims was a big one, calling them images, objects, detaching himself emotionally. It's chillingly similar to how soldiers might depersonalize an enemy.
Stripping away their humanity.
Right.
And he downplayed the violence, too. Said killing wasn't the goal.
Right. Killing was just instrumental, he claimed, for possession, avoiding capture. He called the torture aberrations. Denied sexual gratification was the main driver.
And shifting blame.
Oh, yeah. First, it was hints about a genetic defect, some malignant condition inside him, this entity he was fighting against, externalizing it,
Suggesting he wasn't fully in control.
Exactly. But then later, he shifted again, started blaming external factors, especially pornography.
Ah, the pornography argument.
Described it like an addiction that fueled his urges, said it somehow snatched him from his good Christian home.
So which justification was it? Or was it just whatever worked?
The analysis suggests it was all deflection. Blaming society, media violence, objectification of women. It's classic condemning the condemners, trying to make himself look like a product of a bad environment, not just bad.
So after all the denials, the manipulation, the justifications, the end came.
January 24th, 1989. Execution by electric chair. CBS reported on the public reaction, a lot of grim satisfaction, a sense of closure for many.
And the survivors, Kathy Kleiner's reaction.
Yeah, CBS mentioned she felt grief, not for him, but for all the victims. A really powerful reminder of the human cost.
And the hope was that his death would finally let the focus shift.
Back to the victims. That they would be the ones remembered, not him.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear Bundy's case is just profoundly disturbing, complex, and its impact on true crime, on how we see serial killers, it's undeniable.
Absolutely. I think for people listening, the key things are that jarring contrast, normal outside, monster inside, the vital role of forensics, the incredible trauma and resilience of the survivors, and just the ongoing, unsettling quest to understand why.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe. What allowed this? What factors, internal, external, let him do what he did, evade capture for so long? What does his case tell us about evil, about deception, about our own fascination with these dark stories?
It really makes you think about the ethics of true crime, too, and the absolute importance of remembering the victims always. Their stories are the ones that truly matter.
From all of us here at Podsession, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to visit our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com, for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. See you next time.